Hi, class. I want to spend a little time introducing myself and talking a little bit about the course and HCC. So, first, let me introduce myself. You can call me Dr. Madron or Dr. DJ should we meet or talk over the phone or through Zoom. Um, so, I'm not originally from Washington County. I'm from Cecil County, which is in Maryland. Probably about 2 hours east of here, sits on top of most of Cecil County sits on top of the Chesapeake Bay. Very similar in terms of demographics. Um, so, so when I graduated high school, I went to a college called Eastern University. I went there to play baseball. Eastern University is a small liberal arts school outside of Philadelphia, kind of near Villanova. And I kind of had these hopes of being like a madman. Like if you've ever seen that show, I thought I would be doing like advertising or marketing uh, for these big companies. I thought market so I pursued a degree in marketing. Well, as I was in my senior year, I started to talk to friends who had graduated with marketing degrees about jobs that they were um, receiving offers for, and a lot of those were like telemarketing or sales that would require you to kind of cold call people over the phone. It just didn't seem like anything I wanted to do. Anyway, I also, during that time, took a class about social injustices, and it was kind of new to me, this idea um, of sociology and studying the social world, and it really just was so interesting to me, which you'll learn more about through the semester. And so I decided to, after I graduated or in my spring semester there, I decided to apply to graduate schools and pursue a master's degree in sociology. So I went to George Mason for a year, and I didn't love the program. So it was a theory based program, and I didn't really see how that would be practical. So I looked for applied programs, and I found an applied sociology program at University of Maryland, Baltimore County, known as UMBC. And so I went there, finished up my master's degree in applied sociology, and while I was finishing it up, my master's thesis mentor persuaded me and really just encouraged me to apply to PhD programs. And the two PhD programs that um, he felt were most appropriate and were public policy and gerontology, because I had actually been studying gerontology as a focus in my master's program. Gerontology is the study of aging. Not incredibly interesting, in my opinion, although very important and practical, especially nowadays. But public policy seemed more of like an answer to social issues and social problems. And so I pursued a PhD in public policy and ultimately wrapped that up 2012, I think it was. During that time, I had some interesting graduate assistantships. The one that seems to be most interesting for students to hear was my time at the medical examiner's office. So, something interesting about the medical examiner's office in Baltimore City, which is the one where I was located, is that all homicides, all suicides, and undetermined deaths, which are typically drug overdoses where they cannot determine whether it was intentional or not, they all go to Baltimore City. And the ME, medical examiner, determines cause of death, and then would indicate whether or not it was a homicide or a suicide or an undetermined death. That was what we focused on, like natural deaths. All those other things were not one things that we focused on. So I was employed by DHMH, which is the Department of Health and Mental Hygiene for the state. And we had a relationship with the medical examiner's office where we would collect data on those deaths. And we would enter that data into a larger set called the National Violent Death Reporting System. The goal here would be to look for patterns, right? And ultimately determine risk. So if you were of a certain age, of a certain race, of a certain sex, would you be at a greater risk based on patterns? And that was really what our goal was. And you'll hear me talk about this phrase quite a lot in this class, and that is sociologists want to predict so that we can prevent. And ultimately, that project was intended to do that. Now, I did not love this project. I'll try and paint you a picture. So I would get there and I would just grab files that were assigned to me, and then I would go up in this room, and this room was actually like I don't even know what you would call it. It was like the file room, but it was located right next to the chief medical examiner's office. And then the labs were right there as well. So there's a lot of like containers of like organs and stuff, and it wasn't very well air conditioned, so it stunk. and then my job was to review these files, the autopsy files. So I'm going through, looking at all the pictures, gunshot wounds, you know, reading suicide notes, police reports. I mean, it was just really not what I wanted to do. I can see how some people might think that was interesting and cool, and I thought it might be cool, but it was really just not for me. So I did request a transfer and it took about a year, and then ultimately I stayed at DHMH for a while, and I worked on other projects relating to texting while driving research, obesity, childhood obesity in the city, um, smoking cessation. That was a time when we were trying to do research on smoking in restaurants and bars. So there's a lot of good research that I was a part of. During that time, I was also adjunct teaching, so part-time teaching at Howard Community College and at UMBC. Um, and then in 2010, I was working on my dissertation, so I wasn't quite finished my PhD. I started to look for full-time professorships, and I wasn't sure that that's what I wanted to do. I did like the research side of things, but I thought I would just see what it was like, and so I started to applying. I started applying to different colleges, and Hagerstown Community College was actually the first college that I applied to, and it was more beneficial for us for my wife and I to stay in Maryland because my wife's a school teacher, and she's certified in Maryland, and so if we would have went to New York or Virginia or somewhere else, we would have, oh, Timmy, my dog, um, it would have required some. Let Timmy calm down for a minute. It would have required Chelsea, my wife, to get recertified, and so and this is only an hour away from my wife's parents and only 2 hours away from my hometown, my parents. So and we like the area. So we moved out here in 2010, and now I've been at the college for quite some time. Had some interesting roles at the college. I was the lead faculty member for 4 years, which allowed me to learn a lot about the college from an administrative perspective. Very good learning experience. So, it's enough about me for now. I do want to talk about some benefits to staying at HCC. Obviously, you're here for a reason. Um, Many of you come here because it is inexpensive, and I think that is a wise decision. Let me tell you a little bit about my education costs. And I think I have a slide here that I'm going to talk about, but I went to Eastern University. I was a first time college. Um, I was first generational college student, meaning that I was the first one in my family to go to college. And while that's awesome, right? Because many of you may be like that, my parents were not aware of how to navigate the process in a way that was, you know, probably most beneficial for me financially. And so, where I went to college was very expensive. Uh, and I think now it's around $40,000 a year. But the type of loans that we took out and who we took them out with really has been problematic. I went through Navient, which was it's formerly known as Sallie Mae, and the loan amounts that or the interest rates that were applied were 10, 11, 12%. And so ultimately, my undergrad education, the amount of loans I took out was about 100,000, but the amount that I'll pay back will be closer to $400,000, and that's a monthly payment of about a little over $1,000. So it's about close to our mortgage. And so coming to HCC is it's just I mean I wished that I had made a decision like that to go to a state school, a community college, especially for those first 2 years where you're knocking out your gen eds. So we know that the cost is definitely better at a community college. Another advantage to coming to HCC is you might not know what you want to do, and that can impact your GPA. You may be bouncing around, taking all your gen eds, biology, math, whatever it might be, and you might realize that that you're, that um, biology doesn't come that easy to you, whereas psychology does, or vice versa. Right? For me, that was the case. The hard sciences. When I was in college, I signed up for an anatomy course. I dropped out of that almost after the first day. Then I signed up for another class, like a chemistry class. Not for me. Ultimately, I found this like course about like nature, and we walked around outside and like ate bark, or we tasted bark and meditated, and that was about as close to the natural sciences as I got. Um, but I can see how taking these classes just they may be disinteresting, or just just doesn't it's harder, right? And so that can impact your GPA. But those later years, if you were to decide to pursue a bachelor's degree, your junior and senior year, um, that's going to be hopefully something that you're interested in, you're good at, and your GPA will not transfer over from HCC, and so you almost kind of like get this fresh start at a 4-year school in your junior and senior year, hopefully graduating with a good GPA. I always tell folks, get your AA on the way to getting a BA or a BS. Because it's something that you can highlight as an expertise area, right? The more degrees, the better, trust me. And so let's say you get an AA in English or sociology or biology or chemistry, or whatever it might be. When you are going for your to look for a career job, you could highlight that and say, hey, well, I actually spent time working on this AA and in this particular field, and so I think it can be beneficial. Also, we have articulation agreements with the other public colleges in Maryland, which make it easier to get into those colleges if you graduate from HCC. And then also, I think that a lot of students who head into a 4-year school away from home often become overwhelmed with all the other things at the college setting outside of academics, meeting new friends, finding food, doing laundry, all those things, and instead of focusing on academics. And oftentimes at community colleges, you're staying home, you're local, and you can be more focused on academics. Just pointing out, because I want to talk about the quality of community college education. Some studies are finding that students who transfer from community colleges actually outperform students who started at those 4-year colleges. And flagship universities like College Park, for example, community college students are as likely to graduate as native students, and some of those other universities and colleges are perhaps like a Frostburg University. Though we're finding that community college students are actually more likely to graduate than native students that started their college career there. So what's changed in community colleges? First of all, many students are looking for more affordable options. It's so expensive now, and college has really almost become the new high school in that you kind of have to have it if you want to get a job. So community colleges have really taken on the role of those first 2 years, and in some states actually are providing 4-year education. And I suspect that and hope that Maryland will be there at some point in the near future. It's hard to say, but with the nationwide trend going that way, I would think that Maryland would head that way as well. But the instructor quality at community colleges is outstanding. I think that some people refer to or thought of in the past community colleges as being like a 13th grade, and that couldn't be further from the truth. A lot of folks being hired at community colleges to teach have lots and lots of teaching experience, oftentimes with terminal degrees like PhDs or MDs or JDs, and and also the pool of those instructors is enormous. And so we're really able to hire just top-notch candidates. I don't know how many of you have known someone to go to a large university like Penn State, University of Florida. A lot of these large universities, those introductory classes like this one, Intro to Soc, the size of classes can be enormous, 100, some 300, whereas we really max ours out around 30. Occasionally you'll find a class that might have 40 or so, but really we're maxing ours out at 30. We recognize that teacher to student ratio is really important in terms of quality. So, and that is something that is, certainly going to happen at a community college, making sure that we are, and also realize that at community colleges, a lot of our professional development is focused on our teaching, whereas at larger 4-year schools, you may have a TA teaching your intro class, you may have an adjunct teaching it, and a lot of the focus in those larger universities is on research, whereas our focus is on teaching. Just to give you a breakdown of where I went to school, now Eastern University is one of the most beautiful campuses I've ever been on. It was really awesome to play baseball there, and I ended up uh, retiring, we'll call it, my junior year, and I ended up playing golf my senior year, and all that was really awesome. Would I do it again? I'm not sure. You can see the total repayment amount if you were to go there now with no scholarship. Now you might be able to get scholarships and things like that, but I don't know. Um, it's important to know that to think about the amount that you're going to repay because it really is life changing. It's life changing for us and our family. The amount that I'm having to repay, and because I took out my loans with a private company like Sallie Mae, they don't have the loan forgiveness. They don't have the type of repayment options that you would have or that I would have had if I would have taken out my loans through the federal government. Talk a little bit about sociology. Uh, I don't think it locks you down quite as much as maybe another discipline. I think you'll find that it's interesting, it's practical, we can apply this. A lot of grad schools, degrees look for folks who know how to do research well and write well, and sociology certainly would provide you with that. Here's just some of the areas that we see have fields. You get a degree in sociology, and then you can get a focus. So your focus might be in something else. Tell you where the money is. The money is in statistics. So I often, at the end of a semester with my upper level classes, will go through the job opportunities. If you're willing to go for a master's, and they do have joint bachelor master's programs around the state here, where in 5 total years you can get a bachelor's and a master's degree. If you're willing to get a master's degree and have a focus in statistics, there are a lot of opportunities, research opportunities. We live in a really cool area because we're so close to Washington, D.C., and there are lots and lots and lots of federal government agencies, National Institute of Health, Social Security, um, so many. I can't even think of them all, but there's so many that are looking for folks who can read and write well and have those research backgrounds. I think it's always important to think about, well, I want to get this. I want to get a degree in this field, but what is the outlook, right? Do you want to? I mean, you might love a certain discipline, which is great, right? But if there are 0 jobs, that you should know that, right? And so you can look these types of things up. National the Bureau's National the Bureau of Labor Statistics gives a job outlook projection, and so does the Wall Street Journal. They also talk about income, right? Do you want to know how much someone would potentially make given the degree that you might get? And so sociology degrees, especially master's degrees, tend to pay very well, have decent working environments with little physical demands, meaning like they're not as laborious. Like you're not going to be like moving things around like you might if you had a job, um, like a construction job, for example. And the job outlook is fairly promising. Lastly, as you look to choose a major in a college, I think you should ask yourself a few questions. What's the reputation of the college? Some colleges don't have great reputations. Maybe they've lost accreditation at some point. maybe they're a for-profit college. Do they help you? Do they help students find jobs? And that's one thing I loved about UMBC is if I wanted to, there were job opportunities available after I graduated at DHMH in particular. How much is this degree going to cost you? I think that's an important question to ask. Um, and then, are there more affordable options at colleges with similar reputations? Now, of course, I'm talking about 4-year schools, right? I'm talking about after you graduate with your AA. When you're looking at these other schools, these are the questions I'm talking about. Also, where do you want to live, right? There might not be a whole lot of opportunities with, with certain degrees around here, whereas there might be in Baltimore or DC, or there might be a lot of opportunities around here with certain degrees. And of course, we talked about the job outlook and then the level of education, right? I'll be honest, an associate's degree in sociology is probably not going to give you a whole lot of immediate job opportunities. However, getting a bachelor's degree in sociology or a master's degree in sociology certainly is going to be more employable with a degree in sociology. Now, however, an associate's degree, you get a nursing degree that can put you right into the workforce. So sometimes an AA is enough. But I think it's important to understand what that minimal level of education is. Now, hopefully I haven't bored you too much. I do want to talk a little bit about, I just want to go through the syllabus really quickly. So you all know that there is a textbook available, and this is the link to it if you don't like the PDF version. You can read through the learning outcomes, course objectives, and then I just want to talk a little bit about the assessments, how you're going to be graded. So each week you will have a quiz or several quizzes to complete in addition to a journal reflection. Okay. Here in a week or two, I'm going to go over the annotated bibliography. No need to worry about that just yet. Okay. Going to have some exams. I think 3 exams you're going to have. That'll be cumulative. Okay. We're using D2L. If you're asking me a question about your grade, it needs to come from your HCC email account. Okay. Because I do teach several sections, it is beneficial when you include your full name and if you know and can figure it out the section number that you're in. That's so helpful to me. I can respond a lot quicker that way. I always like to talk about this oath. There's Timmy again, my dog barking. This oath that we take as sociologists, and what I ask you as students to respect as you move through this course, that sociologists respect the rights, dignity, and worth of all people. Sorry, my dog's barking. Our mail's coming. Um, Give me one sec. I want to let my dog calm down just a minute. This is important. So, as sociologists, we respect the rights, dignity, and worth of all people, and we don't tolerate any forms of discrimination based on age, gender, race, ethnicity, national origin, religion, sexual orientation, disability, health conditions, or marital, domestic, or parental status. um, we I think this is really a key component to understanding sociology is is really understanding that we're trying to um, respect others, regardless really of if we disagree. I mean, that's one of the perspectives that we take as sociologists is to try and understand rather than judge. But it's really important to um, to kind of fight for our oppressed groups, and that's what we do as sociologists. We try and be the advocates for those who are often voiceless. And so in this class, I just think it's important that as you write your reflections, as you send me emails, as we talk, that that you are respectful. Um, that's a very important part of this class. Okay. I do allow some late work. So should you miss something, I will open it up for you one time. If you miss it at that time and then you miss it again, you miss it again. I'm not going to keep opening it and opening it and opening it. Um, with that being said, um, if you know that you're going to be away or not have access to the internet or something like that, then and you can let me know in advance. That makes things so much easier for me. Okay. If I have, for example, if I have opened the first exam for you, okay, and everyone's taken it except one person, the exam has closed and the answers have been opened up for everyone to see. It's going to be very difficult then for me to reopen that exam for someone with the answers being available. However, if you knew that you were not going to be able to take the exam, I could perhaps close those answers for an additional day or so. Okay. Um, we do make accommodations for students with developmental differences and special needs. So many of you, or some of you who have already reached out to our coordinator. If you haven't and you need to, then you can email me and I can get you in touch with that person. Well, email is really the best way to contact me, given that the college is really closed to us right now, and so I'm not really getting on campus to have office hours. So really, emailing me, and then if we need to set up a phone conversation or a Zoom conversation, we can do that. Okay. All right. Well, let's have a great semester.